All right. So yesterday I gave you guys some pre-information about houses, oddly copied as it may be. So I gave you guys one of these, which has different types of roof construction, and just in order to not only show you what options are possible, but then also what they are called. And then this one has some different types of native dwellings. So in other words, different shapes of types of houses and residences that Native Americans built and used as well. So between these two, there are all sorts of different types of house shapes and ideas to kind of give you a range of ideas as far as things that you might build. I want to tell you this project. How many of you have done this one before? Any of you? No? Good. It was created by a student, actually. So a couple of years ago, actually maybe more than a couple of years ago now, gosh. A student created a mushroom. They wanted to make a ceramic mushroom. And I said, you know, it's not really a good idea to make mushrooms in school. That could be really misconstrued. And we said, well, what would be some other ways that we could make that and still have it be appropriate for school? And I said, well, what if your, what if it wasn't a mushroom necessarily? What if it was like a house that a little character or a little creature or something lived in? And so from there, we kind of got to the idea of creating what now is our fairy tale house project. So the idea is that you guys will create a character. Okay, so you're not going to take a character that already exists. You're going to create your own character. And that character can be any sort of character. It could be human, it could be animal, it could be a monster, it could be a creature. You are going to make that up. And then you're also going to make up what their personality is. And then based on that personality and that character, so based on their look and their characteristics, their personality, you're going to create and design a house for them. Okay? So there are some certain things that we need to look for when we create a house for a character. Okay, so for example, Teletubbies, right? This is what the character looks like. This is what their house looks like. What similarities do we see between the character and the house that tell us that they belong in that house?
Because they're both organic shapes.
They're both organic shapes. Good, you're thinking on the right path, absolutely. So they both have a lot of kind of curves to them, kind of broad, gentle curves, right? Anything else you guys notice?
The plastickiness of their faces.
So she says like the plastickiness of their faces. So they don't have a lot of change in their expression, right? They kind of have a very flat skin tone. They have very flat texture in like their the colored parts of their body also. And so their house has a lot of that kind of same flatness. In fact, we can kind of see that their house is made up of kind of flat panels and things like that. There's not a lot of variation in the color. It's kind of very even, almost like a cartoon type of appearance, right? Does that make sense? Anything else that you guys notice? Okay, the curves and the colors are probably going to be the two main features there. Obviously, we see that their whole house is curved, so it's made up of a lot of the same kind of either dome shapes or circles, things like that. And then that makes sense with what we see on their bodies as well. So like if we look at like how their feet are shaped, you know, it's all curves. There's not a lot of corners happening. Does that make sense with this one? Okay. How about this one? What kind of connections do we see here?
The bottom of the dress and the top of the house.
Bottom of the dress and the top of the house. So we're looking at this kind of like what's called like a scalloped edge, where it kind of comes to a lot of different points. Okay, and we see that same shape up here and kind of along the bottom of the leaf as well. Absolutely. What else? sure that that's visible. What did we say in the last one? Yeah, colors are going to be largely the same, right, or very similar. So we see, obviously, she's human-ish, right, as much as a human can be tiny and fly. But her skin tones are pretty traditional for a human, what we would expect for a human. And so we see a lot of similar kind of browns, oranges that are going to kind of fall within that same family of this particular shade of skin, right? We see the green of her dress is going to relate to the green of the kind of leaf roof. And then also like the rest of the surrounding environment has those greens in it, so that makes sense together. Anything else you guys notice? How big is this character? Pretty tiny. So how big is the house? Also pretty small. How do we know that?
Tree branch.
It's on a tree branch, so we see the environment that that house kind of occupies, right? That gives us a sense of scale. And you guys are going to have to think about that for your own character's house also. Where does that house actually kind of live or reside, right? What is that house?
A teapot.
It's a teapot. So it's a found object. It's something that, you know, theoretically this character or maybe her parents or whatever found and they acquired and they put it there. We don't know how that happened, right? We don't know the logistics, but it's something that they found and they kind of converted into a home, okay? That would be different than a character that, for example, like built their entire house out of rocks or out of sticks or out of bricks or out of something else. Does that make sense? Okay. What about this character's style? What do we know about this character's personality based on how she looks? Look at some of the words on the sheets that you guys just picked up. Because this is the tough part of the assignment, right? Is kind of knowing how to describe things. So I've got 3 sheets. Okay. This one that says character analysis and script work evaluation worksheet. This one is going to be more to help guide your thinking as you go through the design process. It's going to kind of help you question some things about your character so that you can kind of come up with those answers. This one talks about, it's called character dissection, right? So they're going to talk about the physical characteristics, the social characteristics. So in other words, like, what is your character's job? What is their home life like? What is their place in the community or their status in society? Things like that to help you kind of break that down. They're also going to talk about like the psychological characteristics of your character. So getting into, you know, what are their goals in life? What makes them disappointed? What are their qualities and their abilities? What are their talents? What are their, I like how it says peculiarities, like what is really odd or quirky or unusual about them. So that's this one, okay? These two, though, these are just kind of idea lists of single words that are going to help you identify characteristics about those characters, okay? So what might we associate with this Tinkerbell character? How might you describe her personality? Are there any of these words that look like they might apply? Is she gloomy? Is she friendly?
Yeah.
Probably friendly. How do we know that?
She's smiling.
She's smiling. Good. What else might apply to her? I'm just picking out some words. Cowardly, admirable, adventurous, argumentative, arrogant, assertive, bitter, determined, bold, boring, bossy, clever, cold, courageous, imaginative, evil, excitable, fearless, fickle. I love that word. humorous, humble, generous, gentle, hostile, heroic, grumpy, hateful, happy. What do we think?
She's probably somewhat adventurous because her house is made out of found things.
So the fact that her house is made out of found objects means that she's probably sort of adventurous. She probably had to go through something to create that. If you think about how is she going to get up to this house? It's in a tree, right? We know she can fly. Okay, so that might affect her personality, right? If you had to fly up to your house all the time, or if you could fly, do you think that would change things about how you encounter the world or how you interact with the world? Probably. Okay. How about this character? What similarities do we see? How do we know that this house belongs to this character?
There's a lot of pointies.
A lot of pointy things. What'd you say?
Tall, skinny, black.
Tall, skinny, and black, right? Lots and lots and lots of dark colors. See lots of really elongated lines and elongated forms, okay? This house is pretty unrealistic as far as, gravity or physics is kind of concerned, because would that actually, be standing there in real life? Not well, right? It would need some other sort of support because of this kind of windy, unstable looking staircase, right? Also, if you really think about, like, if you walked into this house, what would you experience, right? There's about this much floor space and a lot of head space. So you could walk in and stand in one spot and, like, move your arms around, but there's not a lot of, like, room space. Like, the rooms in there probably are not very big, okay? But does that character need a lot of room space? Probably not, right? Because they're a more slender, elongated type of shape. Does that make sense? Okay. What words from this list would apply to this character? Just based on looks, right? We're assuming.
Gloomy.
Gloomy, absolutely. How do you know?
Everything's black.
Everything's black. Yeah. So color is going to be just as important as shape and form in how we are conveying something about that character or making a connection with that character. Does that make sense? Okay. How about this one? What connections do we see?
The ears on the top of her house.
The ears on the top of the house, absolutely. So there's kind of like a little opening here, kind of like a funnel-shaped opening to those ears. And we see a very similar kind of oval-shaped opening at the top of the house. Absolutely. Other things you notice?
Colors are the same.
Colors are the same. Similar browns and greens, staying kind of within that narrow color scheme, right? How about the shagginess of kind of the leaves or the foliage that make up the roof? And then we see like the edges of the clothing have that same kind of shaggy edge. Okay, so even like little details like that can still make a world of connection between a character and their dwelling, right? Does that make sense? Personality,
Happy.
happy. How do we know?
Smiling.
He's smiling. Other things about this character? There's a lot of accessories on this house, right? Specifically in like some really bright colors. So I think that's kind of interesting. We see, the clothesline, and we see all of the clothes, and we see all of the toys. The character himself is probably not using them. So he must be either surrounding himself with a family or with other occupants. He probably has a bigger kind of social activity, right, than maybe the one in the last one where it was just a narrow little house for a narrow little character. Does that make sense? Yes, no? Okay. Okay, so what kind of character would live in this house? By the way, this is a photo, not a drawing.
The Queen of Hearts.
The Queen of Hearts. Why do you say that?
There's hearts everywhere.
There's hearts everywhere. There's hearts worked into a lot of little design features, both subtle and obvious. This is a male or female character, right? Probably female. There's some pretty strong gender type stereotypes incorporated into this. What else? Hello.
Not a good time, is it?
Give me like 2 minutes. Okay. You can do that. Don't let me forget about that. What else about this character?
You know, they're nice.
They're nice, probably friendly, approachable,
Happy.
happy. How do we know that?
Well, it's lighter colors, not darker colors.
Lighter colors, not darker colors. Lots of curvature, not a lot of like pointy, harsh angles. Okay, is this making sense? How about this one? What are some likes and dislikes for this character?
Do you like bread?
They like bread or food, but especially bread. What do they probably spend a lot of time doing?
Eating.
Eating, baking, something that has to do with that. What might their job be?
A baker.
Maybe a baker, right? Maybe they provide that for others. Okay? I like the, whatever that icky smoke is coming out the top, I hope that's not baking exhaust, right? Okay? So there's all sorts of different types of dwellings, okay? I gave you those couple of sheets to show you about the different shapes. That's just to kind of get you started. There's all sorts of different types of places that characters can live besides that. This is in your PowerPoint notes, so you have this. Also, I mean, obviously you're going to make it out of clay, but think about what in real life that would be made out of. Okay? It might be wood, it might be metal, it might be a found object or something like that. That's going to affect what your clay textures actually look like, because you want to simulate whatever that material is going to be. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. We will talk about the concept board next. I want you to first start brainstorming about some of these personality traits. What is your character going to be like? Okay. And then once we settle on your character, then I'll talk more about the concept board and how we're going to kind of develop that into a house. Okay? Questions? Okay.